English first. I mean, the question is basically what's the next step in building the semiconductor and chip industry. We have to start moving along the verticals, and I think that's common sense. You know, we on the downstream we will have a lot of demands from data centers. Of course, we have the facilities in terms of midstream assembly and testing. We've started with IC Design Park to multiply the number of IC design companies as much as possible. So the next few steps that the federal government is doing is to really add on to the ecosystem to cover all from the upstream all the way to downstream. Basically, from the design, there's another bit that we need to focus, which is the ODM. Original design manufacturers. If you think about it, when there's a lot of demands for when there's a lot of investments into data centers, data centers are just racks and racks of servers. The chips is in the server, but the data racks you require ODM, original design manufacturer. So the federal government is looking at the overall ecosystem to complete it, and I suppose the difference before and what we are doing now is that rather than just expressing plans and vision, the federal agencies, be it Meteor, MIDA, be it Kementerian Ekonomi, and a few others, mostly we go down and work directly with the key players, because the thing about chips and semiconductor, it has to be of certain scale, and these companies are large companies, and we actually has to work it out with them, and that's the process that I think is ongoing, and we are hoping that from time to time we will be able to get a player in the right ecosystem segment to come in, and then over time we will see a much more complete ecosystem. That's very different than what we have done for decades, which is if we are good in one section, which is the back end, and then we just wait and naturally, because it's the back end that grows, then the same kind of businesses only come into the back end. Now we have the opportunity to go along the vertical and create the whole ecosystem. And I think if we are able to get one by one the major player into the right segment of the ecosystem, then the semiconductor industry in Malaysia, advanced D&T and chip design, will be more sustainable going forward.
Prime Minister, the question. Of course, we understand the current trade war between US and China, banning high bandwidth chips to China, for example. Recently, there's news about their planning equipment to make those chips, and fear of China offshoring their operations here. What's your take on that?
No, I think let's get the details first. Those are news. I think we sit down in with the US representative here. So I think our position that is Malaysia is a neutral country and is a very important component of the global supply chain for electronics and semiconductors. I think that is recognized. So obviously different countries and this geopolitical tension will continue. Let's wait for the details, and then whatever I think we have to work it out, we'll work it out with either the US, China, and I don't think I want to share it here.
Yeah. You mentioned about the game plan to use Asian made semi productive. Japan will, I mean, is a capacity for
No. It's like, I don't think you can impose such protectionists. I think we have to take advantage of the fact that Malaysia gets so much interest for data centers now. And the life cycle of data centers, obviously, from time to time, they require chips, So suddenly it presents an opportunity because there are demands for chips. Any country in Malaysia's position now would want to see that we revved up our IC design industry to take advantage of those demands. Of course, the vision is that increasingly over the years, as Malaysian design chips gain traction, then it will be able to meet the demands of these data centers. But that's what I mentioned just now. It doesn't happen because we wish it to be like that. We have to build the ecosystem, and one part that we hasn't got when it comes to that part of ecosystem is the ODM. We need to start working with the ODM because they are the ones that integrate between the data centers and your individual chips and the design and so on. So as this ecosystem begins to take place in Malaysia, that provides the opportunity for data centers in Malaysia to begin considering Malaysian design and manufactured chips. And because at least theoretically our chips will be cheaper. So that's the consideration that the federal government is looking to make sure that we complete the ecosystem. And once the ecosystem is there, I think it's a common sense that you want to source as much as possible locally to service these data centers. But I don't think we will ever go to the kind of policy like that because semiconductor chips are very competitive, technology driven, and you require as many people to compete to provide the best chips at the best price. And that's going to be, I think, the mainstay of the industry in Malaysia.
Might be referencing.
How long are you going to hold me here? Go ahead.
Might be referencing Henry from Digital News Asia. I would like to ask you regarding about the E&E productivity nexus that was launched somewhere back in 2017. Will this initiative be involved in the IC design hub initiative to improve the productivity of the IC design industry?
E&E Productivity Nexus actually work very closely with Kementerian Economy. In fact, Dr. Sri Wong, who is in E&E Productivity Nexus, is part and parcels of our work together with Dr. PY and a few because these are the very senior IC and chip professionals in Malaysia. They work with the big giants before. So we work very closely and their feedback is part and parcel of what you see today, which is the national policies, the interventions that we have. IC design as an industry is very new in Malaysia. So my view is that even before we start talking about productivity of the IC design companies, we really need to scale up to get more companies here first. So I think that productivity nexus that I think you refer to refers more towards the manufacturing and the back end, because it's a totally different game altogether. When it comes to manufacturing and back end, productivity and automation and everything is very key. But I see design is basically engineers playing with their computers. So unless you are talking about how to get fresh graduates to do 20 hours instead of 8 hours per day, So I think the focus of E&E Productivity Nexus is still very much that core segment of chips and E&E, which is the manufacturing and back end. This is something quite new, but the whole chain, the design for the whole ecosystem and value chain of semiconductor, people like Dr. Sri Wong, Dr. PY, and a few others are instrumental in our discussion about how to move forward the overall industry in Malaysia.
Maybe what about the environmental impact of this? Is the first IC park. As I think someone mentioned earlier, it consumes a lot of power. Is there a target to make how many % will use sustainable, reusable energy, or any targets like that at the moment?
The IC design in terms of power consumption, at least I think my view is that is still quite comparable to your normal office. It's just that it has more servers than normal office. So in the overall profile of energy consumption, in terms of the order of priority about how we want to manage energy consumption, I think the focus is more on data centers. Because data centers consume by far a lot more than any office like this that consumes energy. So, of course, the energy consideration for something like this is very much from cost perspective. So as best as possible, I suppose any form of devices or servers that consume less energy, I think that is a standard practice. But I don't think that it really distorts energy consumptions to the point that it becomes an environmental and sustainability issue as much as data centers are. So I think the national focus is very much about how to manage the requirement for sustainability with the kind of data centers coming and being set up in Malaysia. So that is still going to be the bigger focus in the overall discussion about E&E and semiconductors in Malaysia rather than IC design parks.
You said just now in your speech about building largest IC design park in the world. So any
Did I say that? Oh, then it's wrong. No, I think what I was telling is this. I think it's a good start. See? Because over a period of 1 decade, we only have about 2-3 IC design companies in the country. So in the space of 4-5 months, if we are able to come up with 10, that is actually a commendable progress in terms of IC design. But if you go to the other tech centers in the world, either in the Bay Area, or you go to Suzhou, or you go to Shenzhen, I mean, what we have here is peanuts. And I think in that context, as I was given the impression, I was sharing, that we have a long way to go before we can reach the kind of magnitude that we require to make E&E in this country as vibrant as per the government plan. So I don't think that we plan to build the largest park here and there. I just want to see as many companies multiply and the pipeline of IC design companies grow significantly in the next 4 or 5 years. Because once we have that, the whole ecosystem will grow by itself. It's going to be organic. Once we have enough IC design companies, then the PEs and VCs will come in and they will fund. And the PEs and VCs usually also bring connection to different parts of the ecosystem. And once we have that traction, then the next year the ODM will start considering it, and so on and so forth. So there's no point to really build physical park. The point now is that if we can pack as many buildings in Puchong or in KL or in Selangor with IC design companies, that is our focus now in the next few years. Because the rest will, inshallah, take care by itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
2 quick questions. Number one, how do you balance between overcapacity as well as undercapacity on the whole ecosystem?
When you say overcapacity, you are talking about the design or the whole E&E?
whole part as well, because IC design is part of it, but it will be also a main push. That's the overcapacity side. The undercapacity is also some of the challenges that may come about. That's one question. The second question is that can probably share some teasers about upcoming budget that will also be part of your KE side push in terms of salary for engineers to be teachers.
No, I think the capacity under or over capacity is just part and parcel of the tech cycle. At the end of the day, this inventory building that leads to under capacity or over capacity is the feature of the industry. And I don't think any country that has a significant manufacturing capacity for chips can run away from it. And that has been built into the discipline of the industry as a whole. So, of course, Malaysia will always be subjected to the tech up cycle and down cycle. But what I think most companies will be looking at, and that's where we intend to provide a good home for them, is the ecosystem that can manage the risk profile. And there are, the number one risk profile now is the disruption to the global supply chain. Number two is the disruption because of the geopolitical tensions. Of course, number three is the energy consideration as well. So in all these three, Malaysia actually has advantages compared to other competitors as to how the manufacturers and the semiconductor players wants to manage the tech up cycle and down cycle. I think is part and parcel of their business, and it's actually normal for any industries. I used to be in petrochemical, for example. I mean, it's always about knowing whether you are going through the down cycle or up cycle, and it's always about surviving the down cycle and building capacity as you go up, so that you benefit when the up cycle is. So I don't think that's any different. The second question about salaries. In fact, my next function that I have to rush to is on progressive wage. Pilot project that we have launched and now in implementation stage. The thing about this sector, which employ engineers, it will not be subjected to minimum wage because you don't employ low skill people. So then it's always about what is the starting salary for engineers, and then the starting salary will eventually define the next blending of salaries going forward. I don't think the industry requires any form of intervention from the government in terms of salary, because the offer is high. You are looking at 5, 6, or even 7,000 for starting salary for fresh graduates. If anything, is about the government's plan to prepare the pipeline, because the more IC design companies operating, the more the demand for engineers, and they require a certain type and quality of engineers. But the progressive wage has already outlined the starting salary that is fair for each industry. For example, the starting salary for ahli nujum is about 3,205 ringgit. I never knew that, and they've gone through that process lah. So I think mechanical engineer is about 3,005, accountant is about 3,005. So that process is already ongoing. The salary guidelines is already out by banding of depending on experience and so on. The trick is, unlike minimum wage, where you can force by law, you cannot do that for higher level salary. So that's why it has to be an incentive-based carrot and stick mechanism that government has rolled out through progressive wage. we're going through the pilot test now. Any decisions on scaling it up after the pilot test, we will discuss internally. But I think between Kementerian Sumber Manusia and Kementerian Ekonomi, we see progressive wage policy as another complementary labor market reform that we need to do side by side with minimum wage. And if this is scaled up properly, then it will be able to push the salary scale for the professional sectors, including the engineers, the accountants, the finance, and so on. But it will take some time, I think, because you cannot enforce it by law. It has to work with the industry to push the salary banding.
Okay, last question. All right, thank you.